Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, first of all, for coordinating this public lecture. And thanks for those who are here today. Nice meeting with you, and also for those who are on Zoom. Even though it's not as close as we could for that more intimate, engaging conversation, but it would be nice if whenever you have any questions, you would like to leave it in the chat. We will address that later on. We have a further conversation. So another thing I would like to say first, I also, even though Lara is not here today, but I also want to thank her. She is the coordinator, Global Partnership and Fellowship here at the International Institute of Asian Studies, thanking her for inviting me to join this session in the first place. Even though some of you might not be here today, but they can listen to the audio, the video, or watch the video later on. So once again, I'm very glad to be here to share with you the work in progress of my 5-year European Research Council's consolidated grant entitled China Africa Fashion Power, which I lead at the University of Amsterdam. And today, we also have some of our colleagues joining us here in person. You will know them later on, and some of them are also on Zoom to engage with the further conversation. Together with these colleagues, each with different disciplinary, national, as well as gender positionalities, we form this very diverse team to conduct this multi-site ethnographic research across the world in both China and Africa. What is the main purpose for this research? Before I start, maybe I'll just give you a quick sense of what's going on with this IIAS project. We investigate what I call an under-theorized area, but increasingly vital dimension of China-Africa relations. The rise of China's cultural, aesthetic, and effective power in Africa, traced through everyday fashion and digital practices. So that's why in the following parts, I will be showing you some slides and pictures. You will see me here and there in the market buying things, negotiating with the trader, and also engaging in different online and offline activities throughout our fieldwork. But these seemingly very mundane practices are actually very important for informing us about this different way to theorize China-Africa relations. Our aim here is not just to document the trade flows, even though the business part is also very important, but I myself, as a cultural sociologist working in the media studies department, we also pay much more attention to the cultural, social, and symbolic side of this whole international global exchange. We ask how meanings, beauty, aspiration, motion, travel, and are remade through these what we call South-South circuits. So today, even though we have been to many different places over the past 3 years throughout this research, today's focus is on my fieldwork in Nairobi. But you would also see images, faces of my colleagues here. So when it comes to time that you want to say something, Tommy, you're not right. You want to say more, feel free to chip in. Where we think in this presentation, the relationship between 5 key concepts, that's also the theoretical backbone of this project, including authenticity, originality, creativity, as well as agency and sustainability in fashion. So these reflections form the basis of a forthcoming book chapter that I'm working on. That would be my upcoming monograph. Still in work in progress, but I'm with every single time I present that, and with your feedback, I would get more insights on that. And also connecting them in the later part of today's presentation with another already published article on the rise of Chinese fashion in Africa through the digital lens. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the rise of e-commerce, how it engaged with African consumers, and also this very debate on the potential of data colonialism from China in the African continent. All right. So this is our website. And then also these little circles showcasing all the other members. We have 5 core members, but there are also other affiliates, visiting researchers. So we have a really big, really diverse team. But I'm not going to introduce all different aspects of our IIAS project here today. But if you are interested, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, WeChat, wherever social media platforms that you can think of under China Africa Fashion Power. So you just search these keywords, you will find us. So instead of just the textual description, we have videos, we have visual stories. They are also very interesting for you to get to know more about our project as well. And for the details, as I said, today we might not have time to do that, but I also had another occasion at the University of Hong Kong 2 years ago, explaining the whole spectrum of research objectives and directions of this research. They are also available in the following link. So one of our key aims in this project, and something that I think resonates across many other IIAS projects as well that you have been hearing, you have been learning from this topic seminar series, is to bridge the widening theoretical north-south divide. So that's also the core of my ERC project. We asked how Western concepts such as I said before, authenticity, creativity, cultural mediation, consumer agency, and sustainability take on new meanings in China and Africa. We go beyond the Western-centric understanding of these terms, and then how insights from these contexts, especially through an ethnographic approach, might fit into refine or even unsettle what I call the Northern theoretical vocabularies. Even though now we are still sticking to these terms, but later on I would twist and maybe invite you to use another perspective to understand what creativity could actually mean. So does authenticity. In short, we see not only apply, but also to generate theory from the South. So this is today's outline. I'll go through them one by one in the following parts, starting with some brief ideas on what existing theories on creativity and authenticity, the potential applicability of these concepts, and how would I plan to go beyond this theoretical framework. The methodological session, I will tell you what the other things that we've been doing across this continent in person and online. And then I will touch upon the very key issue called the materiality of fashion. And then later on, today I will make use of 4 ethnographic stories to encapsulate what I would like to say about rethinking creativity and authenticity, and ended with this little touch on the concept of data colonialism and how that extends to other potential aspects. Maybe that would be more related to your research area as well. And ended with Q&A, reflections, and conclusion. All right. Can you see that clearly? That's better. So we start with the notion of creativity. What is creative and what not? To what extent is the Western-centric theory of creativity and authenticity relevant to Kenyan fashion consumers' habitual consumption practices? I think that's very important for me, on the one hand, to go beyond being a desktop researcher. Actually, as an ethnographer, as a sociologist, I have to go to the place on the ground to observe and interact with people to understand whether these concepts are applicable and useful. Western understanding of creativity are still shaped by what Ethan Wilf calls the Western modern romantic ideology, which is not unfamiliar to many of you, because in daily terms, we understand creativity as a genuine kind of creativity. What I'm trying to say is that it must be radically novel, inspired, and born of individual genius. It's not about collaboration, but about who is born to be creative. This narrative has been going on and on in our everyday life and across different creative sectors. That's very normal to us. But I think, especially in this research focusing on the China-Africa fashion circuits, this myth continued to construct the creative industry discourse, privileging rupture and over-repetition and authorship over collaboration. But there are also other researchers starting to think otherwise. For example, the Australian researcher, theorist Michael Key observed in the Chinese context. What thrives is what he termed combinational creativity. So what is combinational creativity? That's the ability to adapt, remix, and recombine. Many people call it the copycat culture or sunshine culture, but there is also potential elements there being regarded as creative. Outsiders may label this sunshine copycat culture, as I said, but locally it's seen as resourceful or even humorous. Later on, you would know what I mean by humorous. In South Korea, I also did some research in the Korean fashion and creative industry back in 2017 to 2018. I interviewed different designers and creative industry workers, and later on, I came up with this idea out of the different practices for them to create fashion meanings or any other creative products. There's one striking practices that I term copyativity. In fact, copying is not something unique in China or many other so-called global southern nations. Even in South Korea, with the well-known, worldwide, renowned creative industry, entertainment industry, the Korean wave, or even the fashion industry, they are also doing a lot of copying in their everyday fashion and creative practices. The strategy I would describe as a remixing of Western forms and infusing them with new symbolic meanings. Also in the K-pop music, that you can see that copying, but also twisting elements as well. Another two researchers, Everson and Neeson, they look into another Asian context, that's Thailand. I'm a big fan of Thailand. I love going to Bangkok, and there's a very famous market called Chatuchak market there. Chatuchak is very exemplary case for showcasing this, what they call mass creativity in the fashion markets. Distributed participatory process linking producer, consumers, and imitators. These traders, designers, they have been constantly copying each other's design, reproducing that within a week's time, and then reselling the newly copied products. When they triumph, the other ones will be copying them again. The next week, you will see the new copies. But instead of being offended, they think that that's just the everyday creative practices. That's the norm, almost the social norm, that different people participating in the so-called mass creative process. So there are many more examples, but together these examples push us to see creativity as a situated, once again, situated, relational, and social rather than an exceptional individual gift. So now we move on to the other notion, authenticity. Today, we don't really have time to connect two concepts together, but you will see a chart that I created showing all the interlinkages between the two concepts. But authenticity seemingly a separated concept, but I think in my research in China and Africa, they in many ways are intertwined. Authenticity in the field of fashion is also a highly ambiguous, constantly reconfigured concept. Numerous existing studies, including my colleague, Johanna von Pessow, is not here today. She also spent quite a lot of time in studying that in another African context, which is Mozambique. Existing studies have already concluded that the product's authenticity is not just coming as an inherent characteristic, but is described to it through a complex creative process of negotiation and reappropriation. I can immediately think of one example, which I also mentioned here. I think for most people living in the Netherlands or the Dutch colleagues here, it's not unfamiliar to you to heard about this term, this brand, Vlisco, that's very famous of producing wax prints. And if you know a little bit more about its history, you would have this question at times that whether Vlisco is a Dutch brand, is it an African brand, is it originated from Indonesia, or what? What is its origin? Why is it authentic, and where is authenticity grounded upon? So decided and manufactured in the Netherlands, having a long history, inspired by Indonesian batik and marketed as African fabrics, not just in Africa, but across the world. There are also other researchers looking into its influences in the Western context, for example, in the US. Over time, this textile became deeply embedded in African naming practices and ceremonies, and later reclaimed by the Dutch themselves as heritage. So another fashion scholars, Leslie Rabin, urged other scholars, I was also inspired by that when I was structuring this project, to move beyond the very Western-centric notion of authenticity together, giving it a very paradoxical understanding. Anthropologist Nina Sylvanus found in Togo that Chinese copies of wax fabrics, this is a very good example, once sewn as fakes, lower quality, more inferior, later on acquired prestige because of their superior quality. So quality supersetting is symbolic meanings in a way. Elizabeth Van, another researcher, she focused on another Asian context, which is Vietnam. She discovered a similar logic in Vietnamese fashion market, and where mimic goods were accepted as normal, even ethical. So they have a more colloquial understanding of what's ethical fashion in that sense. And my colleague Johanna von Pessoa observed that in the Mozambican context, consumers apply comparable moral reasoning, like that understanding of authenticity as well. Today, I'm going to challenge my colleague and some of these other researchers as well, not entirely refuting their understanding of quality as the new standard of authenticity. But I think there's some things nuanced in that we have to pay attention to that. In all these contexts, again, authenticity, I would say, is negotiated through affect, function, and social recognition, not decreed by intellectual property law entirely. But then does it mean that the Western logic of authenticity has been totally eradicated? I think at least in the Kenyan context. Maybe Adwa can tell us more about the Ghanaian context later on. But there are also various situations across the African continent. In my current study of Kenyan consumers' everyday fashion practices, the question that I'm asking is, to what extent do Western theories of creativity and authenticity make sense to Kenyan fashion consumers? Not just to me as a researcher, not just to you who have a different understanding of creativity and authenticity across other Western, non-Western contexts, but to them in their daily practices. Do they have an alternative logic in and through the consumption and production practices? In terms of methodology, because it's a 5-year project, so we have the luxury to do many different things, experiment many different methods. We have been using what I call multi-sided collaborative ethnography with the entire team. Once again, different positionalities. They're Chinese, they're Westerner, they are also African researchers in our team going to different places, being seen and perceived in a different way, but we talk to different actors in the field. Traders, factory workers, wholesalers, consumers, and even models, influencers. That will be our next project. There will be one new member joining us, mainly focusing on the female fashion traders, African traders in Guangzhou, and their mixed practices. They're at the same time a model, a trader, an influencer, and also a consumer. Fascinating project, which I would love to have her introducing to you later on. Further. So I myself, in 2023, I spent almost 3 months in Nairobi, Kenya, for my ethnographic field work. And my colleague, Wei Wang Jupiter, also went there with me. So we conduct different market visits. We conduct a lot of focus group interviews, interview with consumers, traders, e-commerce entrepreneurs, and then also with the consumers, not just in a hotel room or in a cafe. We actually went all the way to their home, looking into their wardrobe, touching and feeling their clothing items. Sometimes they even put together their look to show off their fashionable look as well. So these are the beauty of this mixed research method, enabling us to see through the typical way of understanding fashion from like symbolic or just the textual way, but also the material aspect, the affective aspect, the other seldom noticed aspects of the consumption of fashion. I realized quickly that after my arrival and after I started doing this research, to understand authenticity is not just about people, but also about objects and affects. Sometimes it's not just about how people talk about these fashion items, but also about how people talk and not talk about or how they interact with these fashion items. That's all inspired by my ongoing research using wardrobe study as a method that emphasize the materialist or affective aspect of these fashion objects. I'll give you some concrete examples. Later on, I'll tell you more about that as well. From the smell of leather, the feel of fabric, or the pride in negotiation, or even the shame, embarrassment of imitation. So all these nuanced aspects also inform my own theorization of this China figure fashion trend. As I said, I will start with 4 auto-ethnographic stories, each of them drawing on a specific methodological tool that I use, market visits, focus group interviews, wardrobe studies, and one is the participant observation in one of the largest second-hand clothing market in Nairobi. That's called the Komba market. Story one, the original Adidas treasure. Today I'm not wearing that, but I used to be wearing that pair of original, quote-unquote original Adidas sneakers for my presentation. Entering the second week, we visit the fifth fashion market in Nairobi. We, meaning me and Jupiter here. On a weekday afternoon, we wander about the toy market. That's the name of that market that you can see here. Freely. Tried out different first and second-hand shoes and clothes because people, it's not easy to just talk to people. You have to be proactive. You have to initiate conversations. One of the easy ways to do that is to buy something. I cannot buy everything because everybody wants you to buy something, but you have to be strategic. Choosing, sorting out things, and talking to people. So we somehow stopped at one store. I saw this pair of Adidas shoes looking quite nice, as you can see here. And then I was thinking maybe I should test out my price negotiation skills. So I start talking to them. I start negotiating for price, and then Jupiter was also helping me to look around and see other products and pretending that we are leaving, we are not buying, but if you can give us a discounted price, then we buy. So we have been engaging in that, a very interesting conversation with them. And they also had spent almost half an hour walking around the market to find the new product for us. And also, I guess at the same time, they're telling everybody that these two are consumers who are willing to pay for this product. So pay attention to them whenever they walk by. In the process, we learned these African sellers' routine practices in the marketplace. That's the first thing. But the second thing is also about my own reflection on. I was thinking, would I buy this pair of shoes? I think they might not be real from my understanding. I sort of have this psychological resistance to buying them. But I think in that very occasion, I somehow changed my mind. I actually paid for the products. And I was thinking I have to be here for at least 3 months. If people here actually don't care about that, why should I care about that? I should go beyond that very framework of understanding what is authenticity, because people see me according to the understanding of what authenticity is. So I think I broke out of that very mindset at that market. And a team of sellers who spend half an hour scouting around the toy market for this treasure for us. They are also giving me a sense of, we also somehow follow them and then also see how the market operate. It seems to me that they actually don't have that problem. 3 days later, I was proudly wearing that pair of shoes, going to another shopping mall. That's the Two Rivers Mall, the so-called high-end local shopping mall. Someone in the store selling other customized sneakers. They saw me wearing that pair of shoes. They came to me. One of the guys' name is called Denise. He spotted my new trophies. He came by and then he asked me, where did you get that? And then he suddenly kneeled down without asking me. He touched my sneakers. I was not offended, of course, but I was like, oh, why are you doing that? He described cheerfully, they are not real, but it is a good deal. I bought it with 7,500 Kenyan shilling, which is approximately 50 euros, which is to them quite an expensive pair of shoes. He said one thing, this is even better than the original. I vividly remember that line. And also remember that humorous interaction. I think, in my perspective, this humorous conversation and these jokes, instead of being a kind of insult or criticism, it revealed a deeper truth about the understanding of authenticity. Authenticity here was measured less by legal status, intellectual property rights, or by value, but by value, social exchange, and clever negotiation. And these sneakers were authentic to the market's economy and of creativity and wit, and to the local community. So that to me during that 3 months as well. Second story, my ethnographic journey, reviewing concepts of authenticity and creativity, start with these interviews, conversation with the people, but then later on, because of the local, okay, I should quickly talk about this. Also, with the help of the local research assistants, I just want to acknowledge that. So these people here, they are from the University of Nairobi, but except the one sitting on the left, he's David Avido, one of the most famous fashion designers in Kenya. We also interviewed him, and he also brought us to the Kibera Fashion Week for our ethnographic research. So I just want to thank him, acknowledge them for being an important part of this research. I did quite a lot of interview also with Jupiter's help and the local researchers' help with the local consumers, male and female, of different social class, economic class, or different age range. We gathered them together according to the age range or the gender to have a freer flow of conversation. So I mainly want to talk about this specific occasion when I talked to some of the male consumers. They were very interested in many occasions about how I wore when I was doing the interview. But they were also very eager, quite unexpectedly, because we always have this perception that male consumers are not that interested in fashion, or male are less interested in fashion than female. But at least in the Kenyan context, as what I talked to Adwa as well, in the West African context, male and female, fashion is something really important to them in their daily practices, identity construction. To these Kenyan young men, LV, Louis Vuitton, and Gucci, they do know about this brand. In fact, they know these brands much better than I do. I remember one specific interview. This consumer in his early 20s, he told me exactly why he bought that pair of shoes and that t-shirt, because that color, that green color was coming from 2018 fall and winter Gucci fashion collection from that specific style. So he wanted to appropriate that stuff. I don't even remember that specific fashion week and the specific styles. So they're very familiar. They're very well versed with the fashion cycle in the West on the one hand. Especially, even though they don't have the access to them, because LV and Gucci, I would say this is their distant dreams. But Nike, Adidas, these are more approachable reference points. Sometimes they got the second-hand versions of that from the second-hand clothing market. Some of the more affluent ones, they can buy that, but most of the time they're buying the replica or the fake original. They have different names for that. More strategic assemblage of many pocket-friendly look. This is also a specific term that they use, pocket-friendliness. That's the most important thing for them to put together their fashion look. Is the everyday practice. It's not just about whether you buy the real thing or not, but about your own creativity and your authenticity in putting together your authentic look. Or the wisdom to kupika luku. That's another term in Shang, that's a Swahili English slang, meaning to dress to kill. Kupika luku. That's the motto of the everyday fashion practices. So when I asked them about their perceptions about Chinese fashion or Chinese-made, Chinese traded fashion in Africa, they love them, they live with them, they also laugh about them, they also tease about the low quality of some of these products. So it's a mixed sentiment. So it's neither just hating or loving Chinese fashion in the eyes of these African consumers. I, as a Hong Kongese Chinese, could not have ever imagined before actually going to Nairobi. That's also one of the things that's so important for conducting ethnographic research. They playfully remix styles, mixing fake and real, local important, first-hand and second-hand, with confidence. One participant especially said that he liked my style, but he said that, but I cannot afford your look. And then you will also never understand what we are experiencing, which I don't disagree entirely. I think that's also the limit of ethnographer. We don't expect that we'll be understand them totally, but we would try to see things from their perspective, or we try to give them a voice to voice out their opinion experience, but we never claim that we can understand them fully. But these interactions are also very meaningful to me, to at least to open up myself to other logics, other understanding of creativity, and questionability, and authenticity. Third story, Dan's portable wardrobe. Dan is one of the interviewees that I met with during the focus group interview, and he told us that he's 20 years old, and then he's doing his study in the university. And then I think the second thing that he told me during the interview, focus interview within the group was, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm doing e-commerce business. I'm also experimenting e-commerce business. I'm also selling things during my leisure time. So I thought, Lord, that's a very interesting case. So I asked him, can we do wardrobe study with you? Meaning actually going to his home in Kasturani, a modest Nairobi neighborhood bustling with small entrepreneurs selling goods, kitchen utensils, wigs, and secondhand clothes. That's about 2 hours away from the city center where I lived back then. So he told us more and more about his story then. On a regular basis, he wakes up at 5:30 a.m. in the morning. I guess many of us are not doing that, right? I'm an early bird, but I usually only wake up at 7 in the morning, not 5:30. So he does that every single morning to read, to do his homework. I wish my students are like that. And to hand wash his own clothes before going to school. Then always dream of doing something big in his life, he told me. Apart from finding a full-time job after graduation, which is extremely difficult because there would only be approximately 10% of people in Kenya among the adults can actually secure a full-time job. That's the situation. His room home, that's what I call it. It's a room, but that's his home, entire home. It's about 10 square meter. And his ideal wardrobe, we were asking him, can you draw your ideal wardrobe to show it us using a more visual approach? He drew this picture of a 2-tier wall shelf. Not a wardrobe, not the typical wardrobe that we understood, but a 2-tier wall shelf. He color illustrated where his clothes can be neatly, tidily folded and arranged, suiting his very organized character. He also constantly told us that he would be using perfume to spray his clothing to keep it smelling good, clean, and then making himself confident. So right now, he doesn't even have that 2-tier wall shelf as his ideal wardrobe, but this is his ideal wardrobe. This one, his portable wardrobe. He has two boxes like that, 2 cardboard boxes, one for active clothing, another one for inactive clothing. And the inactive clothing box, what would he do with that? He would also be constantly picking some of these items apart from the other ones that he chose as his merchandise to be sold in the market. So that's his business. We were there. That's my research assistant, Alphonse. That's my photographer, Paul Cox. And then I was there taking pictures. We were helping him to set up the street market, the store. That's his entrepreneurial pursuit. Carry the goods to the street, helping to set up his store. And then that's what he has been doing, wearing them, reselling them, and also formulating this essential part of the circulation of fashion products. On our way back of the Westland, the center, so you can see the surroundings, the environment. My sneakers were already mud splashed, but then I still vividly remember all these kids, the curiosity about what we were doing there and wondering what new items were being sold during that day. The last story is the one in the Gikomba market, the largest secondhand clothing market in Kenya or even across East Africa, because on a daily basis, there are many traders, consumers coming all the way to Nairobi, to the Gikomba market to stock their merchandise for reselling. So they form this very important regional hub to redistribute, recirculate these fashion items, first-hand, second-hand, to the other parts of East Africa. So I went there early in the morning with my photographer to meet with Eddie. So he's Eddie. I met him in another second-hand clothing store near the place that I live. So I bought one pair of shoes, and then the other day, I also brought another friend to buy something. Then that's an opportunity for me to ask him how is he doing with his business and where do you get all these very nice fashion item shoes, and are they real or unreal? So I try to test their understanding of authenticity once again. And he just said that, oh, you should come with me if you can wake up early. So we did manage to wake up early to go there with him. So that team going there also on a daily basis, what he called to engage in this competition. What is that competition about? Is to compete for the best grade A sneakers coming from all around the world, increasingly coming from China. Here at that market, we were overwhelmed by over 1,000 brokers selling or hawking all their fresh hot items unpacked from the so-called mitomba. Mitomba is the clothing or the shoe belts that have been shipped from many other parts of the world, from the US, from Germany, from the Netherlands, and also many of them are coming from China. Each mitomba having about approximately 25 to 50 pairs of sneakers. One wholesaler estimated there are more than 360,000 pairs of shoes shipped from China and the West arriving in the Gikomba market every single day. It feels surreal to tiptoe, jump, dash through this nexus of murky paths and alleys there. But when we soon get into this rhythm, we just move very swiftly, very comfortably. So Eddie, as a gatekeeper in this market, we exchange friendly checks with the other people, with the lunch seller there. We took pictures with them. We bought different things. We also walk around and try to build some rapport in the market. Paul and I constantly spot something extraordinary. I can just tell you two incidents. We saw this pair of young people. Is the picture there? No. But they have been holding this small coin. They have been scratching the shoe tongue of many of these shoes. Then we look closer. They were scratching away the Made in China logo from the shoes. We didn't ask why, but we keep that in mind, what they're doing. Do they care about the symbolic meaning? It seems that they still care about that for some of them. Also the size charts. Some of the sizes are not so accurate. That's the reason why sometimes they scratch it, remake it. Then one striking story that I heard. Eddie told me I can smell if the shoes is from China or not. Then I was shocked. And I also wonder, why would he say that? Does Chinese feet smell differently from the Western feet? He said it's not the feet, but it's the chemicals used to sanitize the shoes that make it smelling differently. To my understanding, authenticity in this specific case is olfactory, sensory, as much as visual. Okay, so that's me. And the markets that we're walking through. Sorry, I forgot to this one. So this chart, this is how I'm going to map all these conceptual ideas to help us rethink the relationship of authenticity and creativity. In Africa, in particular, in Nairobi's market, authenticity is once again dynamic, multi-layered, and multi-scaled. Different brokers constantly renegotiate the realness and originality of their products. I categorize 7 different types of authenticity as I can observe. Symbolic authenticity. Example, sellers attach real brand labels from the secondhand shoes to from the unwearable shoes. They cut the label out and then attached it to the non-branded fashion items for recreating what they call symbolic authenticity. Even though the shoes, the majority of it is not real, but it has a real label. So that's how they define it as symbolically authentic. Customizing designers, they also make use of their own creative craft. They redesign, they recustomize, they add different elements into the unwearable pair of sneakers or jeans. They create their own aesthetically authentic clothing items. Wholesalers and retailers, we walk around the place, they also told us that one key factor for them to narrate the story is that whether you're buying that within the Gikomba market or you bought it outside. If you're buying that outside, that is a much higher chance that it's fake. But if you're buying that there, you can claim it's authentic because you're closer to all these real secondhand products being shipped inside. So that's what I call spatial authenticity. You maintain your proximity to the center of realness, authenticity, and then you can claim the authenticity. Fable authenticity. That's also this decentralized trading and retailing systems across the entire Nairobi. They don't just sell them in the markets. when we took taxi or took other public transportation to go to the market, you saw many of these people, they just walk around, they knock your door, they have their basket, they have their merchandise coming along with them. They're also selling all these things. And most commonly, they will also tell you the story, I got it, I compared it, I got this pair of shoes from this and there, at what time. So the story itself is also the very way for them to claim its authenticity. Consumers also play a role, as I said, they prosume, they enable their products to be authentic, whether or not they are coming from the real brand. Prosume authenticity in the last one, sensory authenticity. So what I'm trying to tell you is that in this presentation is that there are different ways to understand what authenticity means, just in the African context, just in the Kenyan context. That could also vary across other contexts. But to push this a little bit further to some other aspects of the project, because other people would also say that, oh, this China-Africa trade is not just going in the physical space, it's also increasingly going along the digital space. AliExpress, Alibaba, and also there are other China-Africa e-commerce platforms, and especially in Nairobi, in Kenya, this platform called Kilimo. Kilimo is one of the 5 major e-commerce platforms selling fashion items across different African continents. So I also looked into that, but interestingly, Kilimo was also founded by a Chinese entrepreneur who once worked in an e-commerce company in China. So this is also interesting because what I'm trying to say here is that China is a colonizer to many, data colonizer, cultural colonizer, neo-colonizer. But I think in the case of fashion trade between China and Africa, between China and Kenya, I think the story is more complicated. China doesn't have all the power. To control its merchants. On the other hand, African consumers are not always powerless or passive. They also have the way to negotiate, to resist, to bargain for the fashion products. The main contribution of this project, this aspect of the project, is to map out when we very crudely talk about these top-down power relations between China and Africa, we neglect, again, the materiality and the everyday practices of China-Africa fashion trade. By taking a look at this map, we look into not just the economic aspect, but also cultural, symbolic, or material aspect. They are not just a one-way trade, but they're also negotiation, exchange, and also resistance across different agents, from the e-commerce platform to the consumers, to other intermediaries, to other social media platforms. So if you're interested, take a look at the article. You search China as data colonizer, you will find it. So to end today's presentation, I hope there's still time to wrap it up. There are many other things, many more things I would like to share with you, but I just want to quickly conclude with 3 key points: the theoretical, empirical, and the methodological implication of what I'm presenting to you today. Theoretically, I argue that Kenyan fashion practices destabilize Western binaries of originality versus imitation. Authenticity and creativity are collective, negotiated, and materially grounded. Empirically speaking, it's very important to conduct this ethnographic research, following close people platforms, reviewing how global flows are continually reroute, reimagined beyond the Western orbit. Chinese and African actors co-construct new modes of exploration that defy simple categories of colonizer, colonized, creator, consumer, passivity, and activity. Methodologically, the last point, theory does not have to be top-down. I don't just start with the Western notions of creativity and authenticity, but it's very important to pay attention to how people interpret in their own language, their own cultural practices, what it means. It can emerge from participation, the effective encounters, and dialogue. Sometimes that's not even verbal, it's just sensual feeling. Multi-sided ethnography allows all of us, not just me, to see how creativity and authenticity are enacted in motion through smell, texture, laughter, and daily trading practices. I guess that's all. Ending with a beautiful smile by the trader, 2 traders from the boys market. That's how they pronounce it. Also rejecting the typical French pronunciation, Dubois. They call it Dubois. Dubois market, the biggest beauty and wig market in Nairobi, where we went to and conduct very inspiring interview. Thank you very much.